Support comes from the Seattle Rep, presenting Freak the Mighty, a world premiere musical from the Tony Award-winning producers of Come From Away. Based on the beloved novel by Rodman Philbrick, this heartwarming story of friendship, resilience, and growing up follows two outsiders whose bond transforms their lives. On stage starting July 30th. Tickets at seattlerep.org.
Discovery is happening all around Seattle, if you know where to look. On KUOW's new podcast, Pocket Science, we'll dig into the fascinating, weird, and groundbreaking research happening right here in our backyard and meet the scientists who are in the thick of it. From the lab bench to a tidal mudflat, it all starts with one simple question. What are you working on? The answers might surprise you. Listen to Pocket Science, launching July 6th on the KUOW app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Summer in Seattle hits different. And in my opinion, as a water sign, Scorpio, thank you, summer should be spent by the water. I grew up by the water. Y'all know I'm from Florida. The beach was never far from my home, and there was a beautiful lake and freshwater springs and rivers all around the north central part of the state where I went to college. I lived in Arizona for 5 years after college before I moved here, and while I was super into the desert and cacti and the smell of creosote when it rained, I really missed being by the water. My usual line is in Florida, you get water, in Arizona, you get mountains, and in Seattle, you get both. I'm Katie Campbell, and this is Meet Me Here, KUOW's Arts and Culture Podcast. This month, we're taking the show to Puget Sound and Lake Union and, I don't know, the Bath, and getting refreshed as the weather gets warmer. My co-hosts, Jeannie and Dyer, are here with me today to celebrate life by the water. Hello, you two.
Hello.
I just shared how I grew up by the water. Now I live right off Lake Union, and one of my favorite things is watching and hearing the seaplanes take off and land. Like, they don't fly super often in the winter, so that's one of our first signals that it's really summer or even just spring, is that we start to hear those planes more often. What about y'all? Do you have a favorite memory by the water or a favorite signal that it's time to, get out into it?
So, like you, Katie, I didn't grow up here. I grew up in Chicago, and we have a lakefront. There's Lake Michigan, which is kind of like the ideal of a beach, water that's warm enough to get in, sand. But for me, a huge game-changing memory was soon after I moved here. I was on the Oregon coast, and we were standing on the beach, and I saw bull kelp for the first time.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
Bull kelp is that big long kelp with a bulb at the top, and then long
tendrils,
serpent-like tendrils off the top of it. And I mean, summer spent at Lake Michigan, fine. There is no bull kelp there. I had never seen anything like it, and so in that moment, something shifted for me in terms of my thinking of what water was, because Lake Michigan and the Pacific Ocean kind of look the same from the beach. You can't see the end of it, but I don't mean to be like, we're not in Kansas anymore, but it was really a moment where I was like, there is some stuff in this water that I do not know about. And it was really exciting.
Well, and I would say some of the stuff in that water is just like life, because I'm still shocked that you're describing Lake Michigan as a place to go swimming. I also lived in Chicago for a short time, and maybe I wasn't there at the right time of year, but I would not have gotten into that water, and I like cold water, Jeannie.
I also think that when it gets as hot, it's disgusting in the summer in Chicago sometimes. It's
true.
So incredibly hot. I think you just take the water you can get, know?
Yes, 100%. What about you, Dyer? What water is it that you were after?
I grew up fishing for salmon in Puget Sound, but I want to take us up the rivers, because the rivers that lead into Puget Sound, I grew up close to the Deschutes River down in Olympia, and I would always go fly fishing on that river. And I want to be clear, I have never, to this day, ever caught a fish fly fishing.
Oh, no.
I do believe I look cool.
Fish love to see you coming, Dyer.
They do. I have no proof. I do believe I look cool from my perspective, swinging the rod and making those little candy cane shape, things. But it's just the experience of it. Being actually in the river, being in nature. We just have a lot of that around here. You don't even have to catch a fish to enjoy being out there on the water. It's just a wonderful setting to be in.
Now, I think what we're all describing, kind of like this awe, excitement, chill with the fish. Water, it just evokes so many feelings in humans, like across history, good or bad. It's no wonder it's inspired a ton of art over the course of that history. Like, we can all probably recognize the classic Japanese painting, The Great Wave off Kanagawa, that deep blue wave with white caps towering into the sky. What are some of your favorite artistic creations inspired by the water?
I can go first.
You go first.
Couple pop culture recommendations, movies in particular, but also a painting within the Seattle Art Museum's collection. It's kind of frequently on the wall over there at SAM, and that is a painting by Albert Bierstadt that shows the shoreline of Puget Sound back in the 1800s era or so, and it looks like a fantasy picture, but it's actually a very real scene of what you can see around here. The fog, the water kind of splashing off of the shoreline, the rocks, the trees that are just look like they're hanging barely over the edge, like they'll fall into the water at any moment, but they're just there for ages. That kind of stuff is what's in that painting. And he's got a whole series of them that I believe they have there too, and they're all just remarkable. As if it was some kind of like Lord of the Rings fantasy scene, but it's actual real scenes that they were looking at in the 1800s. I've never seen paintings quite like this, and that like I'm having emotions like looking. I don't know how to explain it. Like, it is giving me an emotional response, and I don't know how. It's very uncomfortable for me, but that's what those paintings do. Now, movies.
Yes,
I'm the pop culture person, so I'm gonna, of course, list off your movie playlist for being on the water. I would say Master and Commander is a very unique film based on some books. If you want to go more fantasy, there is a TV show on Apple called The Terror that is also very, very good. Kind of in the same vein. And then River Runs Through It is also another literary based movie that is popular with a lot of folks.
You know, I love that Dyer brought up The Terror and also the paintings at Seattle Art Museum of the sound in the 1800s. And it actually makes me think you would really love this local band called Helmsley. I'm wearing their T-shirt right now.
Yes, you are.
So they're a 3-piece kind of like post-hardcore, sludgy, noisy, like they pummel, and it's so great. And I mean, the name alone, right? Helmsley, like that's what you yell on a boat when the thing that you steer with, the tiller or the wheel, is no longer perpendicular to the sea when it starts tilting. So you have to right the boat. And their music, a lot of it is about the dark, scary, weird mystery of the sea, like where I thought the bull kelp came from all those years ago, right? And so it's so dark and mysterious and oceany, and I love it. I love it so much. So that is one local sea-inspired art that I would highly recommend. If you're ever like, the ocean makes me nervous, like Helmsley is a really awesome band to listen to. And then the other is this artist who lives in Port Townsend now. Her name's Tanina Silva, and she creates these huge sculptures. You know, they're fiber art, but they look like things that come out of the ocean, and it's from things that she's inspired by when she goes on her daily walks. I mean, some of them look like what a kelp forest would look like when you're underwater. Oh. Some of them, look like the tentacle of a creature that you felt was down there, but you haven't seen any science to indicate it's down there. Like, but it's all, none of it is sort of scary. It's all really beautiful and feels very temporal, like it'll disappear any second, almost like when you're at low tide and you see like all of these like little ecologies that you can only see in that moment, and they're going to disappear at any second because they're not meant to be on dry land with you.
Right.
So yeah, I really love her work. When I think of being scared of something or terror, I think a little bit of you, Katie, because I know you love the horror stories. So is there any like water-based inspired scary art that you love?
Yes. In fact, there's one of my favorite books from 2023, Whale Fall by Daniel Kraus. So this is about a diver who is swallowed by a sperm whale. Very Jonah in the Whale-y. So the premise of the book is this diver goes to search for his father's body in the water. His father was also a diver. He doesn't come home. In the course of this, he is swallowed by this giant sperm whale that is fighting with one of its own predators, a giant squid. It's very Pacific Northwesty in that way. It's wild, Jeannie. You're making a face.
It sounds like a Helmsley song, frankly.
I truly was thinking of it the entire time you were talking about that band. I was like, I hope they wrote the soundtrack. But it's also about father-son relationships. It's about finding yourself. It's about survival. And it is horrifying. It's extremely claustrophobic. The book is fantastic, though. It's claustrophobic. It's scary. It's not for anybody who's afraid of drowning like me.
I can't do it.
It's horrifying.
Yeah.
I had a really traumatic first certification dive when I was learning to scuba dive. I reached about 40 feet below the surface and my equipment failed spectacularly. Not just the oxygen flow, but my respirator. And so it forced water down my throat and I had a little drowning moment. It was awful. One of the things I learned while getting scuba certified was I hate scuba diving. But
it's a good thing to know about yourself.
It's a great thing to know about yourself. But
I think we should put a public service note out here. Just Disney taught us a lesson a long time ago. If you ever are swallowed by a sea creature, light a fire in its belly. It'll choke on the smoke and spit you out. So that's the science behind it. I just want folks to be aware of that.
It's the stop, drop, and roll of being swallowed by a sea creature.
If only the diver in this book had enough room to do so. That's one of the most horrifying parts is while the whale is huge, its intestines are not. I'm going to stop talking about it there because I'm either making people sign off from this episode or running to go get the book. Do get the book, do watch the movie. To make things a little more lighthearted with watery books, I'll just reference a couple of recent book club picks. In April, we read The Sea Gives Up the Dead by Seattle author Molly Olguin. Fantastic collection of kind of fairy tales, several of which have a very important water component. For example, she takes the classic Little Mermaid tale and spins it into kind of a scary queer fantasy that was fabulous. In the nonfiction vein, we just finished The Bird with Flaming Red Feet in June, all about the pigeon guillemot by Maria Mudd-Ruth. And that was really fun because there was no spooky elements. It was just about how to go see this really cool seabird that some of us just don't know was out there. So there you go. A little collection of terror, a little collection of fantasy, and we'll top it all off with a bird.
Support comes from the Seattle Rep, presenting Freak the Mighty, a world premiere musical from the Tony Award-winning producers of Come From Away. Based on the beloved novel by Rodman Philbrick, this heartwarming story of friendship, resilience, and growing up follows two outsiders whose bond transforms their lives. On stage starting July 30th. Tickets at seattlerep.org.
So obviously, water brings out a lot of creativity in many ways. Does it bring out y'all's creativity?
You know, what it often does for me is it really makes me consider color. And not just because particularly with a body of water like an ocean, you can see potentially so many different colors just by looking out at it. The rocks that we have all over beaches here in the Pacific Northwest, the colors are different when those rocks are under water, when they're wet. And often they are brighter. They're more saturated. You see colors that you would never expect to see on a rock. And that always moves me just because it feels like it's a momentary, it is a lot like being at the ocean during low tide where you can potentially see these animals and creatures and plants that you would not see otherwise. But it feels really special because in moments, as soon as that rock ceases to have that relationship with water, those colors disappear.
Yeah.
I mean, I know people who collect rocks when they're by the water, and they often do so because when they first see those rocks are underwater. And there's something really splendid about the colors. You take those home, it's not the same.
Yeah.
but you have like sort of a tangible thing for the memory of those colors. And I don't necessarily know if that means that my creativity is being tapped into, but it really causes me to consider color and what an experience is like in one environment versus another, and how lucky I am to be able to occasionally tap into this other environment.
I love that. As a rock collector who has been saddened when they get home, I relate to that deeply. What I learned eventually was to put them in my plants containers so that when I watered my plant, it kind of revitalized the rock. And even if it fades, you can always bring it back again. And boy, doesn't that feel like summer. Dyer, what about you?
I guess I'm going to be the counter voice.
Oh no!
I don't think. Well, no. It's just I feel like I don't think I could ever be the person that goes to a beach and paints.
Yeah,
sure.
Right. Or like writes a poem or something. I think I'm only the kind of person who can just go there and just exist. When you get around, whether it's a river or the ocean, my mind becomes an ocean. There's a expansiveness that happens in your brain at that time, and they've done studies that people's brains just kind of shift in nature, and I feel like that is what I more tune into, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And there are folks that could do that, and then all of a sudden their mind's like, oh, by the way, now I should do this creative pursuit because my brain has been cleansed of sorts. I think that's more where I kind of fit in.
Dyer, there has been some research that indicates that the kind of, I guess, flow state you can enter when you're creating something where time sort of ceases to feel the way it usually does is kind of similar to the way you feel when you're near water. Because doesn't time feel different when you're sitting by a body of water?
Yes.
Yeah, and you're just focused on that. I couldn't say if it lights up the same parts of our brain or what that is, but we have a couple of different ways as humans to access those spaces where time feels different. And one of them is creating, and another is sitting by a body of water, which is really special.
And it makes you think about, in our modern area, a lot of us get removed from these points. It's another great reason why living around here is because we have so much access to these things.
Exactly.
But a lot of folks do get removed from them, and you wonder what would happen if you just give them a little taste of that.
Yeah. We should bring back convalescing by the sea like like sickly 18th century ladies. When I'm just feeling depressed and like I can't, like there's too much, all I want to do is go by the water and just be like, alas, I feel anxious and I must away to the sea. But like in all seriousness, I love to read by the water and not necessarily need to be creative in my own right, but enjoy somebody else's creativity, especially if there's a water element in what I'm reading. Like the sound of the waves hitting the shore is so a part of like my existence, like 22 years in Florida. Like that's just in my blood at this point. And it soothes me. It does slow time down. It does give me space to just breathe, and like I love a seabird and like watching the herons and the rocks, and there's always like people going by. It's just, it feels lovely, and I can have this peace, and then I can away back to my cottage perhaps and maybe try to create something out of that as well. But like I think what it ultimately does for me is give me space to enjoy somebody else's creativity. By the way, y'all are also tasked with talking about the water this month. What are you working on to get by the water?
The story that producer Matt Martin and I will be bringing you speaks to our region's love of the water, being on the water. And that brings to mind nature. It brings to mind being in the outdoors. However, we're mashing that up with our region's fondness of modern beats and sneaking in a party where you least expect it. If you go to KUOW.org, we've covered stuff like this before. We've had like renegade raves underneath bridges and stuff like that. Go check that out. But as we discussed in our Night Owl episode, Seattle isn't well known for its happening nightlife. We have found something that shows folks are still finding ways to get some evening activity going on in very inventive ways. So without giving away any more details, you can look forward to that.
Jeannie, I'm so sorry. You have to top that now.
I know. I don't have any ideas. No. So it's probably easy to get from this conversation that lots of people who live here are inspired by the water.
Yeah.
There are lots of visual artists here who are inspired by the water, including Tanina Silva, who I mentioned earlier. There's music that's inspired by the water. Helmsley isn't only writing about the ocean and what lies beneath. There are a couple of different artists that I am really looking forward to talking with about how water informs the work that they do. And what's cool about that is when the water informs the work you do, it also informs how you live your life, which is something I want to know more about as somebody who lives so near bodies of water and still feels like I don't get nearly enough time by them.
Oh, I feel that too. Well, here's hoping that we've given everyone listening today plenty of ideas to get by, on, around, in the water. Y'all, thank you so much for joining me for this episode.
Thank you.
Thank you, Katie.
And thank you for listening to Meet Me Here. Meet Me Here is produced by KUOW, a proud member of the NPR network. It's hosted by me, Katie Campbell, Dyer, Oxley, and Jeannie Yandel. And it's produced by Brandy Fullwood, Kyle Norris, and Matt Martin. Our editor is Phyllis Fletcher. You can find more and support the show at kuow.org/meet.
Support comes from the Seattle Rep, presenting Freak the Mighty, a world premiere musical from the Tony Award-winning producers of Come From Away. Based on the beloved novel by Rodman Philbrick, this heartwarming story of friendship, resilience, and growing up follows two outsiders whose bond transforms their lives. On stage starting July 30th. Tickets at seattlerep.org.
Discovery is happening all around Seattle, if you know where to look. On KUOW's new podcast, Pocket Science, we'll dig into the fascinating, weird, and groundbreaking research happening right here in our backyard and meet the scientists who are in the thick of it. From the lab bench to a tidal mudflat, it all starts with one simple question. What are you working on? The answers might surprise you. Listen to Pocket Science, launching July 6th on the KUOW app or wherever you get your podcasts.